You know that feeling, right? You're at the checkout, you see the total, and you just kind of think, wait, how did it get so high? Well, that feeling has a name, inflation. And it's doing more than just changing your grocery bill. It's reshaping our savings, our spending, pretty much our whole future. So let's dig in and figure out what's really going on with our money.
It's that little voice in your head at the gas pump or the grocery store telling you that your money just isn't going as far as it used to. I gotta tell you, you are not imagining it. What you're feeling is a major economic force at play.
And that force is called inflation. Now, the easiest way to think about it is this. It's not that a cup of coffee is suddenly worth more, it's that your dollar is worth less. Every single dollar you have buys a little bit less today than it did yesterday. That's what people mean when they talk about a loss of purchasing power.
So what's actually behind all this? What's the mechanism that pushes prices up? Well, economists have boiled it down to 4 main drivers, or you could call them engines, that can really kickstart inflation. Let's break down each one. First up, you've got demand-pull inflation. This is the classic textbook case of too much money chasing too few goods. Just think about the mad rush for concert tickets or the newest gaming console. When everybody wants something and there just isn't enough to go around, sellers can, and, they almost always do, raise their prices. All right, engine number 2 is cost push inflation. This happens when it just gets more expensive for companies to make stuff. So if the cost of raw materials or energy or parts suddenly skyrockets, businesses have to spend more to produce the exact same product. A perfect example of this was the energy crisis back in the 1970s. Oil prices jumped, which drove up the cost of literally everything, from manufacturing to shipping. And guess who they passed those costs on to? Us, the consumers. Our third engine is a huge one right now, imported inflation. This is what happens when your country's currency gets weaker compared to others. All of a sudden, everything you buy from another country costs more. Let's take a look at how this could play out in a really big way for the US.
And this right here shows you why that is such a big deal. For a typical American family, almost a third of their money is spent on imported goods. We're talking about the phone in your pocket, the clothes on your back, even a ton of the parts in the car you drive. That makes all of us incredibly sensitive to any shifts in the dollar's value.
So let's run a little thought experiment. Imagine next year the US dollar drops in value by 12%. Just like that, everything imported from other countries is now 12% more expensive. That's a massive price shock for the average person. And here is the direct fallout from that. That 12% price hike on a third of everything you buy, well, it means your total cost of living just jumped by 3.6%. Think about that. That's a huge bump in inflation from just that one single factor. Okay, our final engine is a little different. It's all in our heads, but wow, is it powerful. It's called inflationary expectations. Basically, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we all believe prices are going to go up next year, we start acting differently today. We might buy that new car now instead of waiting. Or, and this is the big one, we start asking for a pay raise to cover those expected costs.
And that right there leads to this classic, tricky feedback loop called the wage-price spiral. Here's how it works. People expect prices to go up, so they demand higher wages to keep pace. Well, companies are now facing higher labor costs, so what do? They raise their prices to protect their profits. And then we see those higher prices and we demand another raise. And the whole cycle just spirals upwards, digging inflation deeper into the economy.
So we've got all these different forces pushing and pulling on prices. Some are global, some are psychological. But how do officials take all that messiness and boil it down to the single inflation number we see on the news? So how do they get that number? Well, government agencies create this giant imaginary shopping list. They call it the consumption basket, and it's filled with hundreds of things an average family might buy. We're talking everything from apples and eggs to movie tickets and car repairs. They track the total cost of this basket every single month. And the percent change in that total cost? Well, that's the inflation rate. Okay, this is going to sound a little weird, but for most central banks, the goal isn't actually zero inflation. In fact, a little bit of inflation is usually seen as a sign of a healthy, growing economy. The real question is, how much is the right amount? It really is all about finding this sweet spot. Now, high inflation is obviously bad. It just chews through your savings. But deflation, when prices are actually falling, is way worse. Why? Because if you know that new TV is going to be cheaper next month, you're not going to buy it today. And if everyone does that, the whole economy can just grind to a halt. That's why most central banks aim for a small, steady amount of inflation, usually right around 2%. All right, so let's pull all these threads together. We've looked at the engines that drive inflation, and we've talked about the target everyone is aiming for. Now, let's bring it back to that big, real-world scenario we were talking about earlier.
And this really brings us to the key question for the next couple of years. If the dollar does end up falling, could that one engine, imported inflation, be powerful enough to keep prices high no matter what else is happening in the economy? It's a really good reminder of just how connected we all are in this global marketplace. And honestly, the answer is going to shape the value of the money in our wallets for years to come.